Somewhere in your house right now, there is a small plastic object that costs almost nothing and matters more than you think. A toy car, a doll missing an arm, a ball wedged under the couch. You probably assume toys are a modern invention, something dreamed up by a marketing department to sell plastic to tired parents. But the real answer is far stranger. Children were playing with toys before writing existed, before cities existed, before agriculture existed. And the objects they played with tell you something about the human mind that no history book bothers to mention. Let's start with the obvious question nobody asks. Why would evolution waste energy on play at all? Every calorie a hunter-gatherer child burned was a calorie that had to be found, chased, dug up, or fought for. Food was never guaranteed. A day of failed foraging could mean a night of real hunger. So why would a species living that close to the edge let its children spend hours doing something with zero immediate survival value? Rolling a stone, chasing a sibling, stacking pebbles into a tower just to knock it down. That should be a waste. And yet every human society ever studied, without exception, has children who play. That consistency is the first clue that something important is happening. Anthropologist David Lancy has spent decades studying childhood across cultures, and he found that play isn't a distraction from learning. It is the delivery mechanism for learning. A child throwing a small round stone isn't wasting time. He is rehearsing the exact motor pattern his arm will need years later to throw a spear with enough force to bring down real prey. A child scraping mud into a shape isn't making a mess. She is building the fine motor control her hands will need for tasks like weaving cordage or napping a stone blade. Play looks pointless because you are watching the training montage and mistaking it for the credits. So what did ancient toys actually look like? This is where archaeology gets surprisingly specific. In 2015, researchers working at sites in Siberia and Russia recovered small clay figurines shaped like animals, dating back tens of thousands of years, some too crude and too small to have served any ritual or practical purpose, too small to have been tools, too rough to have been art meant for display. The leading explanation is disarmingly simple. They were handled, gripped, dragged, and dropped by children. Wear patterns on some of these objects match exactly what you would expect from small hands, not adult ones. Then there are the miniature weapons. Archaeologists working at hunter-gatherer sites across southern Africa have documented tiny scaled-down bows, arrows, and digging sticks, built at a size no adult could use functionally. These aren't broken adult tools. They are proportioned for children specifically. Anthropologist Alyssa Crittenden, who has spent years living among and studying the Hadza people of Tanzania, has documented Hadza children as young as 3 practicing with miniature bows and digging sticks handed to them by adults, not as punishment or chores, but as something closer to a game. By the time those children reach adolescence, the toy has quietly become the tool. Nobody sat them down for a lesson. The lesson was disguised as play the entire time. Here's the part that surprises most people. Dolls are ancient. Genuinely ancient. Archaeologists have recovered carved figurines with clearly exaggerated human features, faces, limbs, sometimes even clothing details, from sites tens of thousands of years old. Some researchers argue these were exclusively ceremonial, but others point to where patterns, size, and context, small objects found in domestic areas rather than burial or ritual sites, that suggest at least some of them were handled by children in exactly the way a modern child handles a doll, held, talked to, dragged around camp, left in the dirt overnight, and cried over the next morning. You might be wondering whether this is projection, whether archaeologists are just seeing what they want to see in a pile of old clay. Fair question. So consider the balls. Round stones, tightly wound bundles of fiber, and carved wooden spheres show up across an enormous range of ancient sites, often in sizes and weights that make little sense for any tool, weapon, or ritual object anyone has proposed. A ball, unlike a spear point or a cooking vessel, doesn't need much explanation once you accept that a species capable of throwing, catching, and running probably also enjoyed doing those things for their own sake. Chimpanzees, our closest living relatives, have been observed play wrestling, chasing, and even dragging objects around in patterns that look remarkably like games. If our cousins do it without language, without culture as we define it, it becomes very hard to argue that ancient human children somehow didn't. Now here's the twist that changes how you should think about all of this. Play wasn't just physical training, it was social training, and possibly the more important kind. Psychologist Peter Gray has argued for years that hunter-gatherer childhood was built almost entirely around unsupervised, mixed-age play, not adults running structured activities, kids of wildly different ages, from toddlers to young teenagers, playing together with minimal adult interference. In that environment, an 11-year-old naturally ends up teaching a 5-year-old how a game works. Conflicts get negotiated without an authority figure stepping in to fix them. Rules get invented, broken, argued over, and rebuilt on the spot. That is not a minor side effect of play. That is a functioning simulation of adult social life, running at low stakes, over and over, for years, until the real version stops feeling unfamiliar. Think about what that actually trains: cooperation, turn-taking, reading another person's frustration before it becomes a real fight, improvising a solution when the plan falls apart. These are not small skills. These are the exact skills that determine whether an adult can function inside a tightly interdependent group where your survival depends on people actually liking you enough to share food during a bad season. A child who spent years negotiating imaginary hunts and pretend arguments over toy animals was quietly being trained for the real negotiations that would define the rest of their life. There's also something deeply practical hiding inside the play of ancient children that easy to overlook: risk calibration. Watch children today climb something slightly too high or run slightly too fast down a slope, and you'll notice something odd. They keep doing it right up to the edge of actual danger, then pull back. Researchers studying childhood development argue this isn't recklessness, it's data collection. A child figuring out exactly how high they can climb, exactly how fast they can run on uneven ground, exactly how hard they can throw something before it hurts, is building an internal map of their own physical limits in an environment where getting that map wrong later, as an adult tracking a wounded animal across rocky terrain, could genuinely kill them. The stakes of a scraped knee at age 6 are the insurance policy against a broken leg at age 26. So if play mattered this much, why does modern life treat it as optional? Something squeezed in after homework, after screens, after the truly important things. Somewhere along the way, especially over the last century, childhood shifted from something largely self-directed, mixed age, and low supervision into something highly structured, age-segregated, and closely managed by adults. Peter Gray has documented a measurable decline in the amount of free, unsupervised play children get in industrialized societies, alongside a rise in reported childhood anxiety over the same period. He isn't claiming that's a simple cause and effect story. Correlation is not causation, and modern childhood differs from ancestral childhood in dozens of overlapping ways at once. But the timing is uncomfortable enough that it's worth sitting with. A species that spent hundreds of thousands of years training its young almost entirely through unstructured, self-directed play built an entire recent century of childhood around removing exactly that. None of this means every modern parenting choice is wrong, or that a scheduled after-school activity is secretly harmful. Structure has its own real value, and modern children face risks, from traffic to strangers to environments, that ancient children simply didn't. But it's worth noticing what got quietly dropped along the way: the negotiation, the improvisation, the low-stakes practice at handling frustration, conflict, and boredom without an adult stepping in to resolve it immediately. Ancient children built those muscles constantly, almost by accident, because the alternative to play wasn't a scheduled activity. It was nothing at all. There is something almost moving about a 50,000-year-old clay figurine shaped like an animal, worn smooth by small fingers that have been gone for longer than most of human history has existed. Whoever held that object never wrote anything down, never explained what it meant to them. But the wear patterns speak anyway. Somebody's child carried this thing around camp, dropped it, picked it up again, maybe gave it a name nobody will ever know. That child grew up, learned to throw, to track, to read another person's mood, to negotiate a fair share of the kill. And they learned almost all of it through play, the exact same mechanism your own children, or the children you once were, still rely on today, whether or not anyone around you realizes what's actually happening. So the next time you watch a child endlessly rolling a ball back and forth, or dragging a stuffed animal from room to room and talking to it like it can hear them, you're not watching wasted time. You're watching the oldest curriculum humans have ever built, running exactly as designed, in a body that doesn't know or care that the calendar says the year is different now. The plastic object under your couch isn't a distraction from something more important. For nearly the entire span of human existence, it was the most important thing in the room.